Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. I am your host, Christy Haberman. I am glad you're here. Thanks for being a part of our community. A few disclaimers before we get started. I am a licensed therapist. However, this podcast is not to be considered mental health therapy or counseling. It is for entertainment purposes only and is not associated with my counseling practice, Christy Haberman Counseling Services. Thanks for showing up. We're pre-recording before Mother's Day today because Mother's Day is not a good day for me. And I'm sure it's not a good day for many people that are recovering from your sadness and your grief on Mother's Day. I want you to know that I see you. I hear your silent tears. I hope you took care of yourself on this Mother's Day from your child that's passed on. Maybe it was the air being brushed on your cheek. A beautiful butterfly. An arm around your shoulders that you felt the weight but couldn't see they were there. On days like Mother's Day, I look for signs of our deceased children, because I think they miss us on those days too. She had experienced a loss, and her relative was going through the dying process. And I remember telling her, I'm sorry this sounds weird, but enjoy it as much as you can. That's one of the things that I really miss about our regrets. I think is more than the word miss. One of my greatest regrets is that I was not there when Christopher died, because at least you would have had that moment to say goodbye, right? And so everyone that has a child die in an accident or by suicide or homicide, or the numerous ways that people die alone, I think that's one of our regrets, is that we're not there. So if you had the opportunity, as painful as it was, to be there for your loved one that was dying, take full advantage of it. Tell them how much you love them. Take the time to say those goodbyes. So my mom died 2020, I think. Oh, it might have been 2021. It's 2021. Or was it 2022? See how awful I am? I don't even remember when she died. Anyway, Christopher died because I had this acute knowledge that I didn't have a mother. I didn't have the traditional mother that baked cookies and stayed home, or even that loved me. And so Mother's Day has always been particularly hard, even before Christopher died. And I hate to say it, but when Christopher was born and I was a single parent, like, I had my own family finally, and I knew Christopher loved me and I loved Christopher. And so for 25 years, I had that sense of family, and then he died. And I did not realize what an impact that made on me, that he wasn't here anymore. Because he was my first child and because I was single, he predated my husband, he predated his brother. When he left, he took my sense of family with him. Because I've always been isolated. I've talked about this on the podcast enough, and that you guys are fully aware of what my story is when it comes to my own family. But I've always felt isolated from my family. And after Christopher died, Colin is an adult and has moved on and has his own family. I have really felt acutely that loss of family when Christopher died. So Mother's Day was always tough. And it's just me and Raj again. So this person that I was talking to is experiencing her first Mother's Day with the loss of her relative. And I had this strong urge to, when her relative died, knowing that Mother's Day was going to be a rough day, a really rough day. And I don't know her that well. Like, we're coworkers. We're not close friends. I go to her at work when I've had a tough day or I need someone to talk to, in like crisis situations, but not, I wouldn't say like we're friends, like you'd go out and have a Coke or anything like that. So I thought it was kind of weird that I felt so strongly that I should give her a plant. And I was very specific about what kind of plant to give her. I have spider plants, and I have a grow light in my office at work, and those things just keep reproducing and reproducing. So I have spider babies everywhere. But I felt really strongly. And there was a couple of times that I'm like, Christy, you're just, I don't know. I'm like, why are you doing this? Why are you so concerned about giving her this plant for Mother's Day? But I did it anyway. And I gave it to her. And she was kind of surprised. Understandably, because as I told you, But what I found myself saying to her, which I think kind of freaked her out, was I said, I think this is a present from your mother to you through me. And I stopped to think about that. And I was like, so here I am doing this for somebody else. And I really wish somebody had done it for me when Christopher died. I was like, why am I not doing that for myself? Why all of these years have I curled up in a ball and cried because I miss my son? And it's extremely painful for those of you that have families, as dysfunctional as they are, or as much conflict as you have with your parent. For those of you that have families that show up for you, just be so extremely grateful for the fact that they show up. Because when you don't have that, when you are so acutely aware of how alone you are, major holidays are tough. And I think that that's one of the things that have made Christopher's death so tough, is because I don't have supportive parents or supportive aunt and uncles or supportive grandparents. I just don't have those things that help you get through these kind of situations. You just have nothing. And so this year, I noticed this podcast has been so incredibly helpful. For those of you that I keep talking about coming on and telling your story, I can't encourage you enough to start talking about how you feel, how much you miss your child, how much it impacts you physically, emotionally, spiritually. It is absolutely so healing, and I am more than willing to give you the platform in which to do that. It has been so incredibly helpful. So for those of you that show up, and my audience keeps getting bigger and bigger, for those that show up, I appreciate you, each and every one of you. So anyway, you have helped heal me in a way that I wasn't able to do previously. So this year I decided to show up for myself. And I went out and bought myself flowers. So instead of waiting for someone to do something for me and remember me for Mother's Day, I did it for myself. And there's a picture on my Instagram of Grieving Insomniacs of the flowers that I bought myself. And there was something so healing about that, about how I felt like more in control because I went out and bought flowers for myself. It's the other thing that I told this person that I gave the plant to. You got to take time for your grief. We get so busy, right? And I'm no different than anyone else. I'll distract myself with the TV. I will distract myself with talking on the phone, with doing anything but examining my grief. But this podcast has forced me to every week to sit down and talk about it. And I've taken a deep dive into myself that I wouldn't have done without all of you listening to me. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And the more I tell my story and the more I talk about my grief, and I feel accepted in that. There have been moments, it is social media, there have been moments in that it hasn't been so pleasant, but overall it's been pretty good. And I want this for this person. So I told them. And I also talked to them about signs, because our loved ones are there. They want you to know that they love you. They want you to know that they are still alive. I have recommended some James Van Praagh books. It's on my Facebook post and maybe a couple of months ago. So James Van Praagh says that when he does mediumship readings, he says that one of the things he hears from people on this other side the most is they want the living to know that they're not dead, that they still exist, that their love and their energy that they have for us is still there. That's a hard concept for some people to accept, and I'm not sure that I understand why that's so hard to accept, that love, that feeling it's about the feelings of it. The feelings still exist. The feelings are still there on both sides. And if you work to create that connection, you will feel loved. And on these very hard days, when the reality is that I can't hug my son, I can't hear him say, "Hi, Mom, happy Mother's Day." The physicality of him, I miss greatly. But I carry him in my heart, and I can feel that love, and I can feel the love that he has for me. And I haven't seen any signs today, but I'm sure I will, either today or tomorrow. There'll be something where I'll go, well, there you are. And I'll know that it was him saying hello. So last week I talked about some ways to cope with your feelings on Mother's Day. I hope you do some of those things today. I'm going to set this to publish on Sunday, even though we're recording on Saturday. But I want you to know that I'll be thinking of you. Because the day is hard. And I don't mean to go into a rant, but here's the other thing about social media that's so hard. Is that people posting pictures of what they got for Mother's Day. Big flowers at work. Now my youngest son is a very, very private person. I talked to him about this once and he told me, which is kind of funny. And sometimes I wish I had his self-assurance. So I don't know where he got it. I don't think he got it from me. But he says to me, "Mom, I don't need our relationship Facebook validated." And that was so absolutely true. It was so true. And it took me a second to stop and think about that. And I'm like, he's right. I don't need everyone to see what I got for Mother's Day to validate that I'm a mother. And that's exactly what's happening. And it's almost competition like, because each flowers get bigger and better and everybody's posting. And it's almost like a competition back when you were in high school. Who's got the better clothes, but this time we're competing for who got the better flowers. But that's really tough too. Because I'm reminded of what I don't have. So I don't know if people decide to take a social media break. I know that when I feel that way, I go over to my Instagram and my Grieving Insomniacs. I have actually kept my regular life, so to speak, separate from my Grieving Insomniacs. I still experience this sense of vulnerability. And I don't want the people in my life, like coworkers or acquaintances, to have access to how vulnerable I am on this podcast. And it's weird because eventually someone will find it, right? And if I want the world to accept grief, I have to be willing to put it out there. But I'm still in this shyness stage of it. So I keep the two separate. So when I jump over to Instagram, over to the Grieving Insomniacs, and I browse through that, because that's where I feel like I belong, in my community. And we have a pretty large community of grieving people on Instagram. And it's really quite amazing. I feel supported over there. I see regular people that talk to me, I shouldn't say talk to me, but leave me comments on my Instagram. Sometimes I feel like I know them, and I have people that leave me comments on my Facebook, and I feel like they know them too. And it's just kind of incredible. So I jump over there. I don't know, maybe other grieving moms just get off Facebook altogether or off social media altogether. I'm not sure. But part of me wants to put a snarky comment on that, right? And say, you know, quit posting about you know, grief awareness. Um, please don't post about Mother's Day, except for one of the things I'm trying to teach where I work is that it's your responsibility to manage your emotions. The world's not going to adapt to you, so you need to adapt to the world. So this is an example of that, which is my responsibility to manage my own emotions when it comes to Facebook, and not the rest of the world's responsibility to regulate their behavior so I can feel comfortable. But isn't that what happens in grief, right? That we're expected to not speak, not talk, because other people can't regulate their feelings. Well, that goes for them too. If they feel all some kind of way when they see our post about our deceased children, they need to manage their own emotions instead of asking us to not talk about it. I just know that occurred to me, and it's like, oh, you know what? That's a pretty good idea. Because that's what we're being asked to do, right? I've been in some grief groups where people object to seeing the pictures that people have of their deceased children. It's like, if it makes them feel good to show those pictures, let them show those pictures, because it's our own responsibility to manage our own emotions. And I think that's kind of what's going on in the world right now, is that people are, rightly or wrongly, they're expressing their emotions outwardly, and any kind of emotion is acceptable, where it used to be that we were responsible for managing our own emotions, and we didn't expect the world to change to accommodate us. And I don't know where the line is. I mean, I'm a therapist. If somebody were to ask me that question, I'm not sure what I would say, because I know the clients that I work with who complain about this and that happening in their environment that triggers their trauma. Tell them it's your responsibility to manage your trauma. It's not the world's responsibility to change so you won't be triggered. So I think about that a lot too. So I'm doing a lot of rambling today. This is just kind of how the way I talk. But the bottom line is to take care of yourself in however you feel. Now, for some people, understand that for some people, taking care of themselves means not dealing with their emotions on Mother's Day, keeping themselves so busy that they don't have time to stop and think about it, which is a strategy for the short term, but it's not a good strategy for the long term. Other people, I'm a wallower. For me, it's easier to wallow in it than it is to run away from it, because then it always comes out sideways. I had this experience at work where there's a situation I got myself into. I don't know how to. Anyway, I got myself into the situation, and then I got into the situation and it didn't feel good. So, but I couldn't really describe how I felt. So I said, I feel all some kind of way. I was talking to somebody, they started laughing. I go, no, really, honestly, I don't know how I feel. So it's all some kind of way. And that happens sometimes, that we don't really know how we feel. And I think that can happen on Mother's Day frequently, especially if you have living children. Like, I have living children, I have grandchildren. So I'll probably see my child and grandchild today, but not actually on the actual day. But if I did, I would enjoy seeing my son and my granddaughter and my grandson and his family. I enjoy that, but I'll still be missing Chris. You're always acutely aware that someone is missing. I will say that I don't necessarily miss my mother anymore, but if she were still alive, I'd be acutely aware that I wasn't invited or involved at Mother's Day at my mom's house. And it's not a matter of, well, just invite yourself, because there is no understanding of the chaos that I have lived with when it comes to my mother until you live it. So some of you that might have comments, keep them to yourself. I've heard them all, and how I'm going to go to, that fiery place because of my relationship with my mom, but I don't believe that. But anyway, so on Mother's Day, I used to have that feeling of separatedness, which I don't anymore. I'll just be missing Chris. And I don't know how it is for the rest of you, but like there's always this layer of sadness over everything. And sometimes I look in the mirror. I had a student tell me the other day that I had really bad RBF. Google it if you want to know what that means. And I never used to be that way, but sometimes I think that when I stop and think about Christopher, like that sadness is just written into my face and my skin. And I just think I'm forever changed. I think my aura has changed. Yeah, I had somebody tell me I walked around with black clouds around me. That may be true. That may be true. But I miss my son. So on this Mother's Day, I don't really have advice for you. There are no words to explain how to get through this day. Each of us is finding our own way through. I wish you peace. I wish you kindness. I wish for some degree of comfort for you on this day. I'll be thinking of each and every one of you, and all that collective energy will go out into the world and bring comfort to those people that are alone on this Mother's Day. Thank you for listening. If you would like to come on the podcast, reach out to me at grievinginsomniacs.com. I'm on Grieving Insomniacs. Wait, it's Grieving Insomniacs. I can't remember. Anyway, I have a Gmail, grievinginsomniacs@gmail.com, Grieving Insomniacs on Instagram, and Grieving Insomniacs on Facebook. So reach out to me and let me know if you'd like to come on the podcast. I would prefer it to be people that want to tell their stories, not necessarily people that want to sell things. I sure would appreciate it. I want stories. So thank you for listening. This is Kyle.